Brian Hooper, when was the last time you hand built a lineup?
I think it was during the Reagan administration. I honestly, I don't know.
So for people who don't know, my guest, Brian Hooper, aka BRIC75, I do a show with him every Wednesday night on his channel. It's called Lulz. We'll talk DFS strategy in there, although it's kind of become a gossip rag for DFS at this point, I'd say.
Yeah, it definitely has. Come to think of it, though, I probably have like degen built like a lineup at a bar or something with my brother, like when I was just out randomly. That's probably it. Otherwise, I use an optimizer.
Yeah, so for people who aren't familiar with you, you've noticed Brick at the top of the standings. If you're familiar with the RotoGrinders rankings, he's in the top 10, has been living up there for years. Tell people just your general process, because as I think you've learned over the past few months, what you're doing is unique relative to the field of DFS players.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know if that's completely decisive yet, but I think you're more right than I am. But yeah, I model out my own player projections and ownership, and then you go on top of that and try to use game theory to enter, a plus EV 150. I do use like Vegas numbers and stuff like that. So I'm not like going from bottom up like the sports bettors do. So like makes it a lot easier in my opinion. But I guess a lot of people aren't doing that. In the defense of the aggregators, like I've said this before on our show, I aggregate NBA minutes projections and then I might tweak them, a little bit. And I'll aggregate some other things. And I definitely subscribe to, almost all the sites and compare my numbers to theirs each week and make sure I'm not too far off.
For sure. People in the chat are telling me my video quality, and I see it on the YouTube stream, is like very poor, which, I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it in StreamYard and it seems fine. So I have no idea what's going on with my quality. I'll try to tweak that as we go along. But for now, you just get Brian in beautiful HD. Yeah. And that's all that matters here.
You are messed up in StreamYard on my side too,
I am?
Yeah.
That's so weird. I have no idea what's going on there.
It just looks like it's, like the 1995 camcorder or something.
Let me drop myself off the call real quick. And
okay, I'm the host.
No, just for I let you host for a millisecond. Does it look any better now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, we fixed it. We did the old Nintendo controller, blow on it, turn it on and off. Okay, so and talk a little bit about, so what I thought might be a fun premise is thinking it through the lens of, I assume most people watching this show are either hand builders or people using other projections in optimizers. But for this show, since we focus on single entry, 3max, hand build nation, I wanted to get inside the mind of Brian Hooper. As a hypothetical, you wake up on a Sunday morning, all of your own databases, projections are all gone. And you have to go use other people's projections and build a lineup from your gut, with just the tools at your devices that aren't your own. Where do you start? Where do you even go with that?
I would probably take the optimal from each site I subscribe to and then look at them and see which ones they spit out. And then I would probably just do one lineup. I would like get rid of all my 150s. Unless that's part of this game where I have to keep them, then I might try to do something different. But then I would just do like one, or I guess the 3max, I might do 3. And from there, it would be like the size of the GPP.
Yeah.
And the bigger the GPP, the more correlated I'd get and the further away from that optimal.
Yeah.
And maybe like a little more contrarian too. It depends.
Yeah, because I think that's been a thing that I've noticed looking at these single entry tournaments and 3max across the higher stakes, let's say from like the SPY going on up, is that there's almost like these 3 different styles of play. Like you'll see in the really nosebleed stakes, like near just optimal cash game lineups. Then you'll see the ones that are like 1v1, 2v2 pivots on the optimal. Both of those two categories crushed last week. And then you have the third, which is more like the game stack, the heavy correlations, which didn't hit last week with all the individual plays going off. Where in that spectrum do you think you would land if you were hand building these lineups?
I would cater to each one, basically on the lines that you just described. So like the higher stakes ones, I would say their floor is higher for sure. If you look at, if you look at an individual week, 1 week, it might be lower than the milli or something, but most weeks on average, the floor is going to be higher to cash in those, but the ceiling is going to be lower. And that's just a function of there's just not as many entries in there. The more entries you have, the higher the ceiling's got to be.
Yeah.
If you just go back and look through the database on RG, and you could see this for yourself. So I would like purposely try to get more correlated, contrarian in when there's hundreds of thousands of players compared to like 2,000 or whatever, like the SPY this week, where I don't think you need to be. And I also think there's also like the higher stakes has better players. So they're going to just have better plays. So the floor is going to be higher and harder all around in those games. It's not just that these guys are just playing the straight optimal. There's a little more to it than that.
And the thing that the reason when I look at those optimals and the 2v2s even off of them, that's hard for me to wrap my head around is, like you said, it raises your floor. But in these, even in the SPY, you're still trying to get access to the top 5 spots for the majority of the prize pool. And when I look at those lineups, when you're matching the field with 5 to 6 plays, I just don't see realistic paths most weeks to cracking that top 5 with that kind of a build.
Yeah, I mean, you're right though. I mean, we've talked about this before, but like it's getting more and more top heavy in a lot of all these GPPs, even the single entries. So I looked at the SPY for the show before we went live, and that's 100K to first, 40K to second. Isn't it normally like 100K, 50K? And sometimes they've even used to have in the past like 100K, 75K to second.
Yeah, this week they're doing something a little weird because they have the double SPY this week, and I know they have the Mega Millionaire, and they just have a different theme to the week. But yeah, this one is interesting because I believe the SPY is generally 50,000 to first. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, they doubled the entry fee, but it's the size of generally the smaller SPY because they normally run the 5555, and now they got the 2222, which is normally the baby SPY, but this is now the big SPY. Baby SPY, big SPY, double SPY. I don't know. But you told me you have been deep in the sim lab running sims on this specific contest for us this week.
Yeah, I did it. I didn't have a ton of time this morning, so it's pretty good. But like, so I tried to like simulate. It would take too long to do 2,200 lineups, so I did 1,500 lineups of reasonable lineups that you'd expect to see and the exposures you'd expect to see in this GPP. And then I ran it back as in cash game form. So it's the same lineups, one in the SPY and one in the cash game. Does that make sense? Did I explain that right?
Yes. And I think we should just for people who aren't familiar with the concept of simming, maybe give just like the simming for dummies explanation.
Yeah, you're just trying to recreate what you think's going to occur in the game, and then sim it out with like a certain amount of standard deviations or different distributions for each player. So like Tyreek Hill is going to look a lot different than some like tight end that's probably only going to get 3 catches for 15 yards or something like that, where Tyreek Hill can go off. So the players all have different standard distributions, and then you simulate it a couple thousand times. It depends on how much time you have, and then you look at the outcomes compared to various factors. So it depends. So like for this one, I did the SPY, and then like a 1,500 man cash game where like half gets paid off.
And is this sim, is it only factoring in that distribution of projected points, or is the sim factoring in ownership in any level and what the opponents are doing?
So you could do it a whole bunch of different ways. So mine factors in what I think is everything. So correlations, ownership, points projections, different distributions, etc.
Okay. And so let's, should I pull up your Excel sheet here?
Yeah, sure. If you want.
So let people know what we're looking at here.
Okay, so the first page is the results from the SPY. So this was admittedly, like I said, I didn't have a ton of time. So this is from yesterday's projections before the Thursday game. I didn't update them this morning, so I don't even know if there's been any injury news. And of course, by Sunday, we're going to have different injury news, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't gospel, but this is what I had projected for yesterday. And then I took the top 10 lineups that showed in this, and then you can see here, this is the SPY, the top 10 lineups ranked by ROI from a 1,500 man SPY. And then the second one I did a 1,500 man cash game, a double up essentially, and then rank the top 10 lineups based on ROI there.
And so when I see these lineups, I'm seeing, you know, some correlation here with stacking and stuff. So this sim is putting a premium. Does it have built-in stack rules, or is it just giving a premium if there's correlation to those plays?
Well, the correlation's built into the sim. So
Okay.
like when Patrick Mahomes completes it to Travis Kelce, it knows that.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so you can see like the top lineup here for, you know, our theoretical SPY here has a double stack of Kelce and Hill. Yep. And I don't know who the Chiefs are playing. Do you know off the top of your head?
It's the Jets. They're 19.5-point favorites.
Okay, so Perrine, right?
Perrine and Mims. You got a double bring back in that.
Oh, okay. No, Mims. I thought
Perrine, Mims and P. Ryan are both
right.
Jets.
Okay, yeah. That's I don't know the roster that well on the this Jets team at this point. Yeah. So okay, double bring back. There you go.
Yeah, and that's interesting here too, that I like the idea, because that's the thing I've been wrestling with too. And I think is this idea of, you know, when we are correlating, like all of those plays get a boost. Like people stare at the projected points. You're trying to get in the most projected points into your lineup as possible. But the second you started adding in that correlation, like the way I think about it is that projection is now getting boosted. The original median projection is no longer relevant in the context of this lineup that has Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit before. And so that, to answer your question from earlier too, that's exactly how I would do it if like everything went out, like you said in that analogy, is I would compare my optimal to my correlated lineup. And I would just look at the points projection. Like it's simple as that. So like, let's say the cash game here is the car lineup. I'm just making up numbers here. Let's say it was 130 points projected.
Yeah.
And then I make my correlated lineup. And then it is the Pat Mahomes lineup here. So like if the Pat Mahomes lineup is at like, let's say 110 points projected compared to the Derek Carr who's at 135, I'd be like, that's too many. You know, I'm kind of making up numbers here, but I would just go back and forth between the lineups I like and the more correlated, et cetera, and like compare how many points am I losing here? And if you're not losing anything, enter that lineup because they got the same EV plus all the correlations.
Yeah. Ace Boogie is tilting. I'm probably donating to this guy every week, and he doesn't even know who the Chiefs play. Laugh out loud. That's the BRIC75 experience.
He doesn't watch our show, obviously.
You should have seen it. Brian and I did. And again, I mentioned this, but just so it's clear. So every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, Brian and I do a show on his channel. I have the link in the YouTube description below on my channel. Very fun show. But we did one a few months ago before the season started where we did a best ball draft. And I was having to coach Brian along on all the players there a good bit.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, okay. So now like another thing I've been thinking is now I sometimes worry, did I swing too far in the overstacking? So like as an example, I had a lineup last week where I went very heavy on that Green Bay Houston game. And basically what happened was I did a Houston double stack and I knew I wanted to play Jamal Williams and Devontae Adams. It made sense, two of the best points per dollar plays. And then I'm sitting there looking at how much salary I have left over at tight end, and it fits with Robert Tonyan. And I'm like, do I just toss him in, or is this now too much? Having 6 guys from the same game, at what point is the stacking and the correlation boost too much to where you're actually every drive, Tonyan, Jamal Williams, and Devontae Adams can't score, and they're going to have some negative correlation there in between each other?
Yeah, no, that's something to think about. I probably wouldn't go more than 2 players from the same team.
Okay.
So that would be 4 from the same game. I think you could push it to 5. In this sim, I did what I do, so 2 max. So there's no lineups in here that would have
So you
whatever
said
4 guys from the same team.
okay, so like there maybe are, if you didn't have that setting, maybe you get a Herndon punt tight end squeaking into that lineup too, and you're saying no, I want to axe that just because I don't think in the long run that's going to be profitable.
Yeah, if I would have thought of ahead of time, I probably would have let those constraints happen and then run the sim just so I could answer that question for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't even really consider it. And you're not going to be facing a ton of those, really, Peter, right? In a spy of 2,000 lineups. How many of those are even going to be in there where there's 4 guys from the same team, 2 from the run back? There's not a lot.
I haven't seen a ton of those. And I do think, yeah, like anecdotally, like over the years, we'll have like 1 or 2 of those nuclear games where you will have 6 guys. But I do agree that's rare. But then on the other hand, we have seen now a couple of these lineups. CSU took down the luxury box a few weeks ago with a triple stack in a single bring back. Leone did it the week before, I believe, in the luxury box with a triple stack single bring back. The one kind of unifying theme with those is that within the triple stack, there was a really cheap punt play, I believe, at tight end, both of those games. It was a Darren Fells week and an Irv Smith. Is that a criteria for a triple stack of like, it's hard to triple stack Mahomes, Kelsey, Hardman, and Hill, but if there's a cheap option, does that make it more viable?
No, that's just a function of optimizers.
Okay.
So like the same thing happens in baseball and other huge stacking sports where it will just, if you say I want 4 guys, it'll just force it in. So It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right play. So here's what I'm thinking. Another way to describe this is like there's 2 different ways you can look at a correlation on a team, and it's kind of like I don't know, like Drew Brees versus let's say Bridgewater, since we were talking about him on our show. So like Drew Brees is going to spread it around, right? So that correlation is more distributed amongst the players. So it might be more viable to have 3 or 4 players in that type of situation than when it's consolidated, right? I like the consolidated ones. So like I want to know. So before Antonio Brown got signed, like the Bucks, where it's Godwin and Evans, and that's basically it. So like last year with Winston, for example, is better than this year. But so when they go off, those guys are really likely to go off. Whereas opposed to like, a Breeze type of guy, when he goes off, let's say he throws 5 and you want to gather all those 5, they might be distributed amongst multiple receivers. Right. So like, that's definitely a way to think about it, because if you just do a 3-man with 2 bringbacks, like if it's the Bucks from last year, you might be throwing away a guy there.
Right. Right. And that's the thing that I think I've been wrestling with, of this idea of we do often have players like on the same team that are intuitively, to me, negative correlated. Every time Julio Jones is getting a catch or scoring, Calvin Ridley isn't. And yet if the game environment is good enough, or we see a top 10% outcome of that game, then that correlation or negative correlation gets overruled by the overall game environment.
Yeah, that's true though. Most people don't talk about that. Where it's the same thing happens in basketball, right? If someone gets the bucket or the touchdown, your other guy didn't. So like it does matter. And like weeks like last week where you just have, 3 or 4 individual monster games, that's going to hurt this type of strategy. But like, I mean, all I could say is if you sim it out, if you do the math, like that will tell you, and it's going to be slate dependent too, but that will tell you specifically what to look at. But like this comparison here that I just did, like you could see with the cash game lineups.
Did we lose your Excel?
Did I bring it up? Yeah.
Okay. Now we're good.
So, okay, I'm going to embarrass myself again here. Okay, we got a Waller. We got Waller for sure. Who's the Raiders playing this week?
They are playing the Browns. So you got the Kareem Hunt in there.
I got Hunt too. Okay, so it's not too bad. And actually, I like this this correlation in cash games more. The opponent running back QB, because then the Browns can get up and then Carr can just chuck it. at the end. But you could see it's a lot more concentrated with value players and a lot less stacky.
Right.
Right. So if you're playing 1,500 or more players, I mean, look at this. So like you could see here, this is not as concentrated. You got, a plethora of QBs, almost a different one each time, except Mahomes is in there a decent amount.
Yeah.
And you could see like the distribution of players is kind of much more spread out. You had a question in your Discord about, what would you do with the top three?
Yeah. Let me read that one. How do strategies change when entering single entry and 3-entry max tournaments? Are the build rules the same with a tight core of players, or do you want 3 unique lineups in 3-entry contests?
Yeah. So quick plug. I have a video on my YouTube about this. I can't remember the name of it, but I only have like 10 strategy videos. It's one of them. I think it's called like correlations or something like that. But the long, to sum that up is if your EV is the same, it doesn't really matter. So, but what I would do is if the EV is the same, so let's just consider points equals EV in our world.
Projected points
for the team. I would just, as long as they're close, I would make the teams as different as I could, and just have 3 straight shots at it, right? As long as they're within a couple points here. So like if we're using this sim here, obviously I take the number 1. I might fade this one, although it's pretty different, right? And then, so like, let's say I don't want to do Mahomes then. So then I'd probably do the Tannehill stack and then the Burrow stack.
Yeah.
And then they're all about the same EV and they're completely different. I got 3 shots.
And let's just also call a spade a spade. It's way more fun to have 3 different games that you can root for, that be it all in. And obviously if you hit on your one game, that's going to be nice for you. But like you said, if you're not sacrificing projected points in EV, like might as well let it rip in a few different spots. That just seems more fun to me. That's how I end up doing it. I've kind of had my core and then I'm cycling through the stacks around it.
Yeah, it's fun until Devontae Adams goes off for 47 and you purposely took him out of the other 2. And then you're like, God, I'd be looking so good right now.
Yeah, that is rough looking at some very nice lineups when you pull out the nuts like that. Here's a good question from Drew, and let's leave this up here. He says, question for Brick, why do you think your sim likes double tight ends so much? And I already know what Brick's response is. His sims don't care about trends about double tight ends. It is just the math, putting in the best plays relative to the correlation. But how do you think about that as far as like, for hand builders, that's a no-no. We look at the top 10% of Millie Maker lineups. I know Britt Devine over there at RG was looking at those trends, and you're not seeing the double tight end lineups in there. So how do you think about that as far as, macro trends versus individual sims like this?
Well, also this is for a 1,500 man spy. So it might be something completely different for a $300,000 Millie Maker, but this isn't really that, in my opinion, this isn't really that double tight end stackish. Kelsey's like a wideout, basically.
True.
Like the numbers he puts up. So if you take Kelsey out, it's not that crazy. I mean, I guess you got Diller. I mean, you got some Kamara in there. You got one Adams. And this is just the top 10. I don't have it saved anymore, but whatever the top 20 or 30 might look a little different. And it's going to vary week by week, event by event. It's not just like some hard or fast rule where I'm like tight ends are bad. Like, I mean, how is, Kelsey's just a wide receiver, basically. He doesn't have exactly the upside of some of these other wide receivers, but some wide receivers don't have huge upsides too. Like you could say Jarvis Landry maybe is just like a slot receiver. He might not go off, although he clearly could, but
And that is the thing when you look at it, like you don't have a Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, or a Hunter Henry, Darren Waller. All of the double tight ends feature Travis Kelce. And I've actually thought, not to talk about season long on a DFS show, but in these tight end premium leagues, the way we think about it is you draft one of the elite tight ends early. That's your flex play. And then you still draft your cheap tight end later because you're just thinking of that as projected points. It doesn't matter the spot. And I do agree that Kelce qualifies as kind of a guy that has that elite ceiling that you just want to jam in.
Waller's close too.
Yeah.
He's not having the year he had last year, but I mean, sometimes last year he's basically a wide receiver.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the funny thing too. I couldn't stomach two Jets in the same lineup. I think this is the ultimate hand builder's dilemma. A lot of people can't stomach two Jets. A lot of people can't stomach two tight ends, but dare I say, this is where you can actually get leverage on constructions if you have a plus EV lineup based on the correlation.
In a big part of the correlation in football is like getting destroyed in the first half and just getting garbage touchdowns at the end of the second half. So like we talked about this a little bit, Pete, Deshaun Foster, Watson, sorry.
Yo, Pete, you're going to tilt the people so bad messing up Deshaun Watson's name.
Last week was a cash game, like pivot point, and he was doing garbage like through three quarters basically, and came on, barely got over the prop line of 293 or whatever it was. Yeah. And so like, but that's because they were down. So like, I mean, the Jets, the Jets is a different story. I get your point here, but like if they are down by, 30 going into the late third or something, they're just going to let him score a touchdown or two, probably.
Yeah. And I'll do a narrative take about the Jets of why I like this setting up for them better. First of all, they are using Pirine way more in the passing game. Frank Gore is just getting those low value early grinder touches. So if you're down 19.5, like Vegas projects, that sets up for Pirine. And then you have Denzel Mims. So Brashad Perriman hasn't been playing. They play similar on the outside. And again, I've been saying this on all these shows this week, but if you don't know who Denzel Mims is, he's a highly drafted pick. He's 6'3", runs a 4.38, 6'6" 3-cone. Like the dude's an athletic freak, stepped into a 32% target share right out of the gate. Now you don't have Perriman playing outside. And it looks like Jamison Crowder is going to be back in the slot, which I think just makes their overall offense a little more efficient. So I like how this sets up for the Jets. And I don't know. We always say that, like, people, do you not want to play Terry McLaurin because Kyle Allen sucks? Well, if you're getting volume or the game script is in your favor, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, for sure. It's scary stacking this, this heavily for sure. And do we have another one here too with Hines and the Colts?
Yeah. And
so it's fully correlated lineup.
Let's talk about Hines because I think that's interesting. One thing that I enjoyed checking out. So Cardi over on RotoGrinders, I'll pull this up here. He has his typical standard projections, but then he just released these GPP metrics and something he calls smash percentage, where he's looking at the range, the distributions, I think similar to what you were talking about with your Sims, and then the amount of times that they beat their projection and relative to their price. And so the reason it made me think of it with Hines is he was actually popping in that when I was looking here. Where was he? I thought he was in here before when I was looking in my spreadsheet. Maybe he's not.
He updated today.
Yeah, maybe he updated. He's down here. He still has a 23.4% smash percentage here, if I get this sorted correctly. So that was a play that I don't think people would gravitate to normally if you're hand building. But when you look at his salary and the range where we have seen him catch a lot of balls, break off big plays, I kind of understand the thesis of that play. I guess I'm rambling here. What do you think of this concept of a smash percentage? It seems kind of similar to maybe some of the stuff going on in your Sims.
I saw he released that. I didn't look into it too closely, but it probably is, a good tool for hand builders where you can just get a quick, a quick rundown of guys who are performing well in his simulation. I don't know how he does a simulation. He probably isn't doing it on the like tournament level. Like this one's for the SPY, this one's for this.
Right.
So that would change things because, like we said, it depends on what you're entering, is what direction you want to go.
Yeah.
But like if you're hand building, I don't think it can hurt you, right?
Yeah. Here's one for you. We got narratives, man. We got LeVeon Bell going against his old team. The people are saying that Andy Reid's going to give LeVeon Bell all of the carries to really stick it to Adam Gase. Have you put this input into your model for the week?
I have not. I was just thinking about him though too. Actually, yeah, it's like what's going to happen there? That really does screw up that running back committee there in KC though, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I actually think we had two very similar situations in the Tampa Bay backfield with Fournette now in the mix with Ronald Jones, and LeVeon Bell in the mix with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And especially with the KC situation, it was interesting last week because it was a blowout. It was LeVeon Bell's first game. They had defense and special teams touchdowns. And I think people looking at just the data are having a hard time knowing what actually this backfield split is going to be. Like in your granular projections, like how do you handle fragile situations like that? Is there just guesswork with how much kind of volume you're projecting?
Yeah, it is guesswork, and I could probably dial it in more than I have. So like for me, that would look like two different distributions. So like you would have a normal distribution that would like, it could look like a bell curve, right? Where the player is going to perform on this side a certain amount of time, and this side a certain amount of time, but generally get around what we expect them to. You could have like a real crazy distribution where it's like a double hump, where like this is an option where he barely plays.
Hey, this is a family friendly show. Please don't say double hump on this show anymore. Sorry, keep going.
Where there's these two distinct distributions for this player, and then run it and then see what happens and how it looks. If I was hand building, I'd probably just stay away, unless I was like you and just knee deep in this and I have a real strong gut feeling on what's going to happen.
Here, I want tell hand builders, because I think a lot of times what happens if you're hand building, say you only are playing a couple of lineups, it feels incredibly nerve-wracking to play a guy who you said maybe on those humps, the distributions there are pretty wide. And let's even say like our Marquise Browns, our Henry Ruggs, the guys who could get you 0 points or 30 points. Mm-hmm. What do you say to people about the reason why you can still and should be taking risks on those guys at low ownership, even if you feel uncomfortable, like this is my one lineup and it could be completely ruined by a 0 here? What's the psychological aspect here from an opto bro to a hand builder?
I think it's more of a gambler to a non-gambler. Like if you gamble long enough, like stuff like that doesn't bother you as much as it did when you first start. So like I say in pretty much everything, gamble more. It's good. It's good for you.
It is
experience.
It is true. Just getting a bunch of those slates under your belt, like whether you're jamming all the showdowns, Brian and I were playing League of Legends, MMA, PGA, DF. Like once you get those reps under, it's easier. And I think I mentioned this with Bales. Like you think of it like a poker tournament. You buy your chips or your entry and you get those chips. Those chips don't have an individual dollar value. Those are literally ammo to play a game. And now you need to use that ammo best possible. So you give DraftKings your $200 for the double spy. They give you these 9 slots in a salary. That's your ammo. Those are your tools to work with. You can't think of like, well, this play is worth this fight. It's like, no, you just got to jam in the best possible lineup to help you win a tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't go insane in like, we've talked about this a bunch of times too before. It's like, don't just jam a bunch of 1%ers in there and think you're, doing something smart. And be mindful of how many entries are in the tournament you're entering. So the less the entry, the less crazy you got to get.
Yeah, and that's also been tricky too, because let's talk about the Thunderdome. It's we have the Osimo challenge going on here with EM Dupe, and the interesting thing about it is you see Osimo took a line where he played a game stack versus a lot of these optimal lineups. So is there a counterpoint to that of, being more contrarian in smaller field stuff might actually make sense?
If I had more time, I could have thrown that in there. That would have been a nice mix with a 20-man Thunderdome and see what it looks like with the same lineups in there.
Well, maybe we follow up with this next week on Lulz. You guys can tune in for that. Maybe we'll do some Thunderdome sims and see what looks optimal from a construction standpoint, because I would love to see how the contest size affects those.
My guess would be it's somewhere in between. And so, but what we can do, since if we'll do it next week, is we can do it with the actual lineups entered. So we'll put in EM Dupe's lineup, Alex's lineup, everyone's lineup in there, and we'll see what it looks like.
Okay. Yeah. And I do think we just got to make sure that they drive to the state line and make sure that they get those lineups in there. You can't do a show with me and Brian and not have a little DFS drama spillover, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry. Matthias had asked this question and I missed it earlier. Where do you run your Sims? Is this secret sauce you're willing to give away?
In my house? I don't understand the question.
I think maybe where do you host your Sims?
I don't host them anywhere. I do it on my computer.
Okay.
I'll put them on my website sometimes, like whatever I put some stuff up on there.
Yeah. By the way, so Brian has a new site up, BRIC75.com. Give him your email address. You get access to free. How would you describe it? You have your prop bets up there where you're comparing your projections to various sportsbook lines.
Yeah, it's just like whatever I have time to throw up on there. I'll put like PGA ownership sometimes, prop bets quite a bit because I keep betting them and I'm not banned. So I'm going to keep throwing them up there and it doesn't hurt me any. I just bet them and then I pop them up on my website. And I also have like, and my projections are on there too. So you can copy and paste for those props if you want them. And I also do have the actual odds from the sports books in Illinois anyways, downloaded on there. And so like if you want to make your own, price your own, or use the prop data for your own projections in DFS, it's all free.
I know when we were doing we were talking PGA more together this offseason on Lulz, and you would look at the head-to-head lines of golfers and use some of the line movement and where the money was coming on to kind of, I don't know what the word is, maybe like change their projection for you too, from like a DFS standpoint. Mm-hmm. Have you been taking in the factor of movement on NFL prop lines with your projections and Sims at all?
No, not the same way with PGA. So like the books all copy other books, right? So there's like a market leader in sports betting. So that's like defined as the book that takes sharp action, doesn't limit anybody, and all the other books copy their lines, right? And so when they move, the whole market moves. And so those ones are pretty sharp, and especially sides and totals in the NFL, NBA, and a lot of the major sports. You're not going to beat them. They're dead on accurate. Use them if you can. But the props is a little different. Like the props, like there's like a company called Camby that does DraftKings props and Bet Rivers props. FanDuel has their own. And so you can find differences in the lines if you bet them early enough. And some are sharper than others. So you might want to use those, in DFS. They're better than they're better than just, whatever Yahoo's projections, right? They're people talk about how easy they are to beat. It's like, okay, let's see you beat them. I want to see all these people who think that they're so easy to beat. They're not that easy to beat. You got to put in a lot of work. So like if you don't know how to make projections and you just use the sportsbook ones, you're not going to, and you maybe average the books together or something like that.
Dare I say aggregate them?
You're going to be doing better than what? 90, 95, 99% of guys out there who are just going with the gut.
Well, I feel like the narrative generally around props has been like the volume isn't big enough to hammer them into an efficient line because the books don't pay as much attention to them. Therefore, maybe they wouldn't be as useful as a projection starting point.
They're pretty good. They're pretty sharp.
Okay.
They're pretty sharp. Yeah, they'll be off. Like if you look at my props from yesterday, I did them late. Like I want to do them earlier, but it depends on how much time I have. So they do move them. Like, you're betting like 2 yards differences with, the lines maybe a little off. So like it's 2 yards and the other way's minus 125 or something like that. So like you're getting like 5%, 9% edges. I think the chatter of the props are really, really bad is overrated. They're pretty good.
Gotcha.
They're better than what most of these DFS entry guys can do.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Eric is trying to pin you down on this. You wrote your own app to run Sims. If you just want to plead the fifth, I'll allow it. Or I just can't tell if you're being purposefully coy or if you don't understand the questions.
No, I didn't really fully understand them. I code out my own Sims and I use a Monte Carlo app to run the actual sims over and over again, as opposed to just making 10,000, which is what I did before, like 10,000 rows in Excel, and then run the sim that way, because it just goes so slow. And if I get bogged down on something I'm building, I'll go pay somebody to write a macro for me, because it'll take them 15 minutes and it would take me 2 days.
Do you post that on like a Craigslist listing, looking for someone to run a macro for me?
I use Upwork.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, division of labor, my friend. Division of labor is a powerful tool.
I was trying to make some kind of like misconnection Craigslist joke, but you're like, no, I actually do just crowdsource it on a thing like that.
Yeah. I put out hey, $30 for this.
Yeah.
You get 100 people applying.
There you go. Here's a question from Jason over here. I'm going to try to understand this. Do we put too much weight on the acronym RB, wide receiver, etc.? Players, for example, like 2019 Christian McCaffrey at 10K, you're getting points as a receiver and a running back. Last year's Lamar, 8,900, you're getting rushing and quarterback play. Is this thinking wrong? My guess is you're just going to say this stuff is baked into good projections.
It's kind of like the Kelsey thing we were talking about before. It's like,
yeah,
who cares if he's described as a tight end, and he can still get you 30 points at flex. But it does matter, though. Positions do matter. Like let's because if there was no flex, for example, like then your running backs are only in competition with the other available running backs, right? And same thing with QB and wide receiver. And so it does matter that McCaffrey is a stud in comparison to all these other running backs. It might matter even more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that actually brings up another, like a common talking point you'll hear is, okay, there's a lot of opportunity cost at running back this week. That if you're going off the board with some guy who maybe has a lower floor, when there's 4 smash chalk plays, there's opportunity cost. How do you think about that concept, as far as like you're still trying to get contrarian, but there's such good projected plays at the position?
Yeah. So that is another way where actually the Cardi smash factor would probably be a really good solution to that one. So usually the easiest way to sim out isn't the way I'm doing it, right? It's just like you do all the running backs and it's like, oh, okay, this is the best running back in 10,000 sims. This is the second best running back. And then there's a percentage associated with that, which is I'm assuming what Cardi's doing. And I don't want to talk out of school because I didn't look into it that closely, but that would tell you quite a bit. So like, let's say McCaffrey is like a 50% chance to be the best running back, and the next best guy is, let's say 10%, something low. That's a huge difference compared to, let's say McCaffrey's 40% and then LeVeon Bell this week's 35. Well, now we got a much bigger. Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty close. But you might find weeks where it's not. We don't have a McCaffrey this year, right? So it's not going to look like we want. Like maybe Josh Jacobs at the end of last year was kind of going off too. Kamara, at times could be like that guy where there's just such a difference that you have to play him, even in a 2,000 man spy event,
right? Where you look at the fantasy points per dollar, even at a median projection, and it's just like the salary can't be high enough for him not to be a good play because his role has basically broken the salary constraints on DraftKings.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Those are, mentioning.
Go to tight end really quick, Pete.
Yeah.
Let's see what he's got for.
I'll sort here again by smash.
A little bit bigger of gap there.
Yeah. And it's interesting here. So looking at Kittle and Kelsey, who are similar salary, but he just has George Kittle more likely to hit this really top range of outcomes. So he's smashing almost 10 percentage points more frequently than Travis Kelsey.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, more like 7, but.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. I was looking at the wrong number. Yeah.
But yeah, and pretty high over the next guy.
Yeah. Let me read it because someone in the chat is asking what smash reads. So I'll just read the definition here from the legend. The percentage chance the player smashes for his price tag. Smash is defined as 3x salary value plus 7 points for DraftKings, or 3x salary value plus 2 points for FanDuel. The raw point addition is to account for the fact that 3x value for a very cheap player may not truly be enough to win a GPP. Raw points matter too.
Yeah, it's a ceiling.
It's a ceiling. Yep. But it's an interesting way to look at this stuff too, and know, sometimes I think with those median projections, and we ask ourselves, does this guy have a ceiling to win me a GPP? Some of this stuff I think can help point you in the right direction with that.
That's definitely a good place to look right there.
All right, let's I say we build a lineup. We've done a lot of good evergreen stuff, and like I say, I'll keep mentioning these again. So right now Brian's YouTube is primarily our Wednesday Lowell show, but if you go back in the archives, Brian has 20 to 30 evergreen pieces of DFS strategy that I highly recommend. That he mentioned the stuff hitting on correlation. I know he talks about contest selection, even some bankroll management stuff. So lots of good stuff there. You guys can get lost in those videos. Check out his YouTube. The link is in the show notes on my channel. Brian, are you ready to hand build a lineup for the first time since the Reagan administration?
Let's do it.
Okay. I think after we talked about it and we were looking at the Sims, I got the ownership up here as well with the RotoGrinders Chrome extension. I'm thinking we build a Chiefs stack.
I was just going to say, now with the Sims influencing us, is this still a hand building exercise?
This is maybe are we like the Terminator? Are we going to become like part man, part machine?
Let's do it. Let's take Mahomes then.
In those Sims, were we getting Kelsey Hill primarily as that double stack, or were any other Chiefs guys making it in there?
Kelsey Hill. That looks like that's it, unless I'm
okay. Yeah. All right. So should we trust the Sims? We will marry our and it's actually funny, we're joking about this, but Bales has been writing about this in his newsletter, how one of his most recent things was about how the best stuff, you start with the data and then you use that data over time and getting familiar with it to develop an intuition that you can then use, where it's almost like a subconscious intuition where you have the framework backed by the data, but then you allow yourself to be flexible because you have so much experience viewing different situations.
Yeah, that's how I played poker back in the day. Try to get like little heuristics from the game theory and just apply them live while I'm playing.
Yeah, because like poker is a very good example. Like DFS, we have all week to think about it. You can rerun your Sims, all of this stuff. In poker, you might have 60 seconds until someone calls the clock on you. You got to make your decision. And one phrase that you've said to me before, as we've talked, of this idea of like, it's hard to keep all the variables in your head.
Yeah, for sure. I've talked with like my buddies about this too, IRL, and I'm like, I mean, there's no way you could keep all the correlation data, the injury data, the industry consensus, the Vegas movements, go down the list for, let's say 900 players on any given Sunday. Granted, probably 300 or 400 of those guys aren't eligible really for DFS, but there's just no way you could keep all that in your head.
Yeah, it would be very hard to do, I think.
Well, there's one man who can do it.
Who is that?
And we all know who he is.
RBX88?
RBX88. I was going to say EM too.
Okay, yeah. All right, we kind of hit on this before. I disagree with this as a blanket statement, but I'll let you respond to Brad saying Kelsey and Hill are too expensive for both to pay off IMO. I think you play Hill or Kelsey. What would you say to that?
I think there was a lineup in those top 10 Sims that's similar. So you could go either way. Yeah. It's like a lot of times, although they look completely different, they're very close in EV. Like even like down to your 100th lineup, maybe in 200th lineup, they're very close, even though they'll look very different. And like we like to we like to think that we know so much about this and what's going to happen. We love football. We know everything about it. When in reality, it's if you run the like simulations or just look at the history of DFS, you don't, and you can't control it. And they're a lot closer than you think.
Yeah. And like, let's use as an example. So I think people are a little scarred in their head from the Jets game versus the Bills last week. I was someone who was rolling out the Josh Allen double stack with Diggs and Gabriel Davis, and Tyler Bass kicked 7 field goals. When in your distribution simulation curve, that happened in one of those simulations.
Right.
Tyler Bass kicked 6. Was it on the 1 percentile extreme? Yes, but that's what we're talking about here. So in this lineup, if we end up going with 2 Jets bringbacks, because both the math and the correlations are pointing us in that direction, to win a tournament, we need the Jets to be far more in the game than the 19.5 spread would indicate, which is also in that range of outcomes. So the way to think about it is, sure, if the Chiefs blow them out, then yeah, maybe they won't need Tyreek and Kelsey to ball out all game. But what about in those simulations where the Jets keep pace? You're telling me Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey can't account for 75% of the Chiefs' production? I think they can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they won one last year. Here's another way to think about this as well. Is okay, let's say our Tyler Bass lineup won in one of the sims. It took first. So it would assign 100K to that lineup, right? Well, over thousands of lineups, though, thousands of simulations, that might not be enough to keep it in the top 150 or top 3 or however many you're entering, top 20, or if it's single entry 1. So even though they'll win occasionally, that's where the sim comes in helpful, where it's like, okay, it will win occasionally when all else fails, but just not enough to make it worth your while over time.
Yeah. Should we trigger people with a double Jets bring back and stay true to the sim, at least for this core game stack?
Well, this is where I think we need your expertise here.
Peter. The hand builder expertise.
The hand builder, yeah. Do you want to take a look at the other?
Yeah, let's take a look. I will say, I think we put in Mims for sure. And the question is going to be P. Ryan. At 3,200, his athleticism, the ownership's not going to get out of hand. Perriman's probably out. So I feel very good about Mims. But yeah, let's discuss the P. Ryan situation here.
Yeah, so here's the 4 Mahomes stacks.
Yeah.
3 of them have Kelsey and Hill. I guess we could get rid of this one too, huh?
Okay, so
look at this.
Look at my guy DeAndre Swift. People forget I did tout DeAndre Swift. This is interesting here because how do P. Ryan and Hines' price compare? So 4,300 and
4, I think.
And 4. So this is one of those situations that I was talking about last week with Robert Tonyan, where I didn't know how to include him. Like my gut chasing correlation just says, hey, break the tie in favor of P. Ryan. He's going to catch passes. I know he's not going to get game scripted out of this. I don't envision Gore getting 25 carries in this game. That said, is this the line where we make the decision on trying to access more points in that other game and trust that Mims is racking him up for the Jets?
I mean, he's in all 3 of them here. And, this also goes to, I can't remember the gentleman's name who didn't like our stack, but you're going to have to fit in some of these cheaper guys once you do go up to Mahomes, Hill, and Kelsey.
Oh, wait. Sure. Now I'm triggered. I am triggered. I didn't realize we did have a double tight end with Will Dissly in here.
Oh, yeah, wow. But you fit in DeAndre Swift, which changes everything.
I think you got to X out the Dissly lineup. I don't know if I can do that one. The hand builder is overruling the Will Dissly double tight end. I was
kind of liking that one, honestly.
Well, the thing that makes me scared about them, it's like Olsen still is getting the most opportunity. I do think Dissly is the most talented, but then even Hollister is in the mix. So they have 3 tight ends. It does seem a little thin for one of these.
That sounds like something that Sunday morning could look a lot different as well, where if maybe somebody's not going to be playing or not playing as much, that would change the whole thing. Okay,
so now we are kind of narrowing down our things. It looks like we kind of have a choice. Let's come back to the running back decision. It looks like we have a choice between a high price luxury guy in Devontae Adams or Alvin Kamara. Do you have a lean in which kind of direction you'd like there?
Yeah, and then Corey Davis Boyd. So Kamara has been like his floor seems to be like 20 some points. I don't know if you've watched any of the Saints games.
Yeah.
I'm a big film guy. I don't know if you knew that. No. When I'm watching Red Zone, the Saints pop up a lot, and they just like are not giving him the goal line carries, the goal line, touches. But if they did, he would get like 30, 40 points these last few weeks. It feels like his floor is 20.
It does. And yeah, we were actually talking about this on the Swolecast. Like, which one would you rather have just in a vacuum, Adams or Kamara? And it does seem like Adams has a little more TD equity right now just because he doesn't have a Latavius Murray in his life. But like when we look here at just the, raw projected points, very similar, and then the ownership, it does look like Kamara is going to catch a little bit more. So how would you break the tie with all things being pretty equal?
Well, I would just use my number one sim lineup, or I would go to random.org and randomly pick.
Yes. Yeah.
There's not a huge difference. So the actual ROI between these lineups, the number one lineup was slightly higher than the rest of them. Like, maybe like a couple percentage points better, where the rest were pretty, pretty close together in the top 10.
Yeah.
So they don't really matter. So this specific run, though, it does look like that first lineup is significantly better in terms of ROI. But yeah, I swear to God, I'm not even kidding. I would just either enter the first one, or if I was contemplating it, I would randomly pick between the two with a coin flip.
Let's trust the sim. Let's play Devontae Adams here. Now, one thing I want to ask you about, and again, we're using the sim as our framework. We're living within those rails, but we can get off of it here, but we're just trying to build smartly. And this is giving us the bumpers, playing bumper bowling to do so. Now, one correlation I want to ask you about here is, so Nyheim Hines and the Colts, obviously people know about some RB DST correlation, but I think Jonathan Taylor intuitively would be the guy that would have that correlation, as more the guy that's going to salt the clock when they're up. Do you think the sim is boosting Hines because of the Colts or vice versa?
That's possible. That's definitely possible. I do need to probably look into that. So yeah, you can consider that.
Okay. Yeah. So that's maybe a thing where we don't necessarily have to have the Colts D there. Now, Corey Davis here, that's a little bit of a tough pill for me to swallow. I know he came back and had a decent amount of targets, but he just, he hasn't been super efficient. And I do worry about that play, but it's also the kind of play that the more I think about is maybe a play I should be willing to make.
That's sums it up for me exactly. I didn't want to cut you off before, but I was like, God, I don't like Corey Davis. But it's much better to think of these guys as numbers and not human beings. And then you just get rid of all this stuff because, if Corey Davis has burned you too many times, like it doesn't matter.
Let me put a caveat to that. Yeah. Unless you are thinking about writing them on Twitter, in which case they are very much human beings. But if you can keep this to yourself and just, play the game on DraftKings and in your spreadsheets, then yes, you should be thinking of these guys like
purely DFS related of making lineups. That's all I'm talking about.
Yeah, please don't call Michael Thomas Slant Boy on Twitter. Never. Stay out of his mentions here. So let me just pull up. I wanted to see what I had on Corey Davis here from, 5,100. Looks like he is projecting for 10.57 points. They are playing Cincinnati here. I wonder if we could it doesn't seem like Mixon is going to play. I wonder if we would have enough salary to do like a Corey Davis with Gio Bernard kind of mini correlation.
You want to bring down my spreadsheet so I can look at the.
Yeah, my bad. Like I'm just seeing how much salary this would lead us with. I think we can eat a little Geo. So that would leave us 2,850 if we punt D.
Yeah. So Miami was the punt D in the second sim lineup. They're down there.
I don't think we're going to be able to fit that.
No, that's why the 4,000 guys were getting shoved in there.
Yeah.
You know what I think we'd have to do is downgrade from Adams.
It's to make that work. So let's see what that looks like. And these are the actual decisions that happen when you're hand building these lineups of like, coming off of that week, it's like, yeah, it feels good to have Adams in there, but then you're going to sacrifice some of these other plays, although it feels weird to pull out Adams so you can fit Corey Davis.
Even Gio Bernard. Is he locked in, Bernard, again this week for the same workload?
The chat just said Mixon did officially get ruled out, so he's going to be their lead back. And I mean, he didn't do a ton rushing, but has a really nice, 5 targets for 59 yards in that TD through the air and 13 carries, kind of like a Kamara light workload.
Okay. Sweet stash.
So we have 6K now if we do force in Corey Davis. With a running back flex that we can play around with. So this is a good question now. Like, do we go back to the Sims and look at other pairings that have like 12,100 in combined salary?
Yeah, I don't have the salary up there, but we could take a look and maybe be.
So this is actually interesting. I am seeing AJ Brown in a bunch of these. I would love to actually try to get Corey Davis to AJ Brown and see if we could build from there.
Okay. He is not in any of the Mahomes stacks, but that doesn't mean it has to stop us.
Yeah. I like, I obviously prefer him. That
How
would
much
leave.
more is
He's significantly more. He's 6,900. Very nice, or not that nice if you're running up against constraints. But just the fact that we're seeing him in there, and if we're going to correlate him with a little bit of geo chalk, which it looks like these ownership percentages haven't been updated, he'll be more than 6.4%. I imagine.
Here's another massive stack.
Yeah. That's the Joe Burrow double to Green and Higgins with the double bring back of AJ Brown and Jonnu. I do like that lineup.
I do too. These guys are questionable, right? I don't.
So no, Melvin Gordon's good. It's Phillip Lindsay who's in the concussion protocol and hasn't been practicing. Cook is questionable. He didn't practice yesterday. They say Zimmer says he thinks he's going to play. I'm leaning that Cook goes. So that lineup, I don't think there's any too big of injury concerns there.
This lineup would definitely make something for me, though. I like it.
Here we go. Yeah, I built that exact Burrow line last night with a different defense. Hand builders unite.
I didn't do it with a hand builder. You're better than me, buddy.
Yeah, you're Andrew. I think you're part machine, dude. If you're landing on these. So let's just for fun, let's finish this out. You guys can see the type of lineups, but I do think in general this is a good way to think about it. Where maybe you don't have access to the Sims like Brian, but you can look at optimal lineups and you can get ideas for the kind of plays that are really good plays that you might want to fit in. And they're not necessarily always going to be in the top 5 lineups, but just scrolling through, you can get ideas like this. I see you have Gaskins up. I like that idea.
These are the cash ones. Maybe we could get some value guys in there instead. And I noticed, I was watching one of your shows and you were touting up Gaskin a bit.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked on Gaskin. I mean, his role has been that of, a bell cow running back, and he's priced at 5,200 and he's not going to be mega chalk. So okay. Let me get this back up here. So if we put him in, that leaves us 5,100 with the flex. We're also correlating. Now we have the mini correlation, Bernard and AJ Brown. We have the Chiefs double stack with the bring back with Mims. We have Gaskin correlated with the Dolphins defense, which we've said is maybe a looser correlation, but both are so affordable that it doesn't even feel like we're forcing anything there.
No, yeah, I like it.
And so 5,100. No, we're not. We can't. Here's one for you, man. There's actually a couple plays I like in this range as one-offs. I mean, I can make cases for T.Y. Hilton, Joshua Kelly, and Henry Ruggs. I was going to say
Ruggs, yeah.
Ruggs is like, I actually love Ruggs as a one-off here because let me tell you, Darren Waller is going to be chalky. Josh Jacobs is going to be chalky. I mean, that is isn't that the perfect one-off leverage on a chalky game?
That's probably in this group. That's probably who I would throw in there.
I like this lineup, Brian.
Guaranteed winner, free money right here.
Guaranteed winner, guaranteed. And say, again, one final little dumb thing. You hand build this lineup, you feel good about it. You see, you have $200 remaining. Are you just like, I'm good, like all the logic and correlations check out, or am I like, oh, let me see if I can upgrade Dolphins D?
No, 2,000 man GPP. 200 doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, dude, this was fun. We went over, but I I think this was like a really good kind of walkthrough of how we can marry the idea of, Brian's far on that spectrum of using the sims and the projections and trusting the math, but then also showing how you can finesse it a little bit. Say, you're only playing one lineup and you don't want to play Corey Davis. It's fine. It's fine. There's ways that you can still work around that.
No, yeah, I agree. This is exactly the way I would do it if I had the time, like to put it all that in, and then the time to pay attention to all the news and do 20 DFS shows a week talking about this stuff. This is probably how I do it for those 1, 2, 3 lineups that are like really important to me that I'll have in more than anything else.
We taught Brian how to hand build today. He taught us how to look at his sims, and we taught him how to hand build. I actually saw, Brian, someone had asked if there was a chance to look at the sims, maybe not, obviously you don't have to do everything, but maybe we could post a link to the Google Sheet of like some of the ones just that we looked over today, if people want to kind of scroll through those.
I could cut and paste it as like a photo on Twitter, or I could upload it to my site.
Yeah, let's do. If it's easy to upload it to the site, let's drive some traffic to the site. If you want to check out,
copy and paste it too. If I do it that way, I think it'll upload. We'll see.
Yeah. So that's BRIC75.com. You just need to sign up with an email. Don't worry, Brian will not spam you. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's trying to harvest your email for bad.
Yeah.
Brian, I really appreciate you coming on. Always, I don't say it enough. I mention it a lot. I owe so much of getting better at DFS to talking and learning from Brian. We started doing the show on the infamous Rudy Gobert night back in March, and getting to talk with Brian on the show, off the show. I've learned so much. The sharpest guy I know in DFS. So go to his YouTube channel, watch those evergreen videos. Like I said, we're a gossip rag sometimes on Lulz, but we mix in some good strategy talk. I think if you guys enjoyed this show, you will enjoy that. That's every Wednesday night on Brian's YouTube channel. Thank you to RotoGrinders for hosting and sponsoring us here. If you're watching, please subscribe, hit the like button. I also have links to a Discord on my YouTube channel. There's a lot of guys talking strategy. I think even some of them are going to hop on a voice call this weekend. I think is a nice thing for people who want to bounce ideas off each other. You can check that out as well. Brian, any final words? I think I did all the housekeeping. No,
that's that. We have the shows on pod form at iTunes.
Yep.
Or the link in my Twitter bio. If you guys want to check that out, it works just as well in audio. And thanks for the kind words, buddy.
Yeah. And I promise you, Brian is not selling your email. I'm
not going to sell your email.
Yeah. And Eric Johnson says, is it a free site? Yes, it's free. You just sign up with an email and then you have login. And Brian also, if you follow him on Twitter, he'll post a little screen grab of the props for the night. And then you can go in, log in, you can sort them, query them how you want, right?
I won't post all of them because it would just be too big of a picture on Twitter. It would look ridiculous. So I just post a few of them on there, and most of them are on the site.
Yeah, it's honestly,
and I'm building other stuff on there too, mainly for sports betting. So if you're into sports betting, you want to check it out.
Yep. All right, guys, really appreciate you all hanging with us this weekend. Good luck this week. Don't forget to play Denzel Mims. We'll see you guys on Monday with the review.